Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. Pete Najarian and I will be breaking down the top news stories of the day, as well as talking a little bit about, for instance, why does the stock market need to go to therapy? Well, because it has too many emotional swings.
That's just
that and more on today's Rebel's Edge. Bang.
All right, the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
I don't know if Johnny Carson had Grok writing his jokes for him.
I can answer that and say absolutely not. I was watching a clip of him the other day, John. The tie was as big as his neck at the top.
Oh, yeah, the fifth.
But the best of all time interviewer. Oh, man, he was phenomenal.
Yep, he was. And, believe it or not, Pete, none of the modern day hosts are anywhere near as good at interviews. No. But you know who is? Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, those guys on All In podcast. Yep. If you ever watch them, folks, they are tremendous. Jason Calacanis, Chamath Palihapitiya, Sachs, who happens to be the crypto czar and so forth, Freeberg. Those guys are amazing. And they
read things, John. They actually retain what they've read, and they don't go as biased sometimes as these other characters do. The one thing I always said about Johnny Carson, and I say it more now because of all these other guys who try to think they're in his shoes, they're mean. They're mean and they're angry. And meanwhile, you look over at Carson, he had fun with both sides, right? Republican and Democrat and everything else in between, but he was never mean. He was funny. He joked about things, but he didn't go after people's character and all the rest of it the way that these guys seem to do. So it's just a different brand now. And it's, like I say, I was watching some of the old clips the other day, just last night, just phenomenal how he went through his interview process. Is great.
He was great. One of the all-time greats. And by the way, Pete, an all-time great did pass away. And I know we might get to mention it in sports, but sure. Mongo McMichael, Chicago Bear, fabulous player in the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame. And that's saying something, Pete.
Yeah, it is.
Just like people told Pete about coming down and playing football in Illinois, high school football. Yeah. But Texas high school football, if you're in the Hall of Fame, I guarantee if I read those names off, Pete, people would recognize those players because they became great pros too.
Most of them are probably in the NFL Hall of Fame. Let's be honest.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, let's hit macro real quick, Pete. Initial jobless claims, a little bit higher, but durable goods orders, they surged 9% plus in March. That was much better than the 2%. These are durable goods, folks. So these are things that last, and people were buying them like crazy. Now, were they buying them because they're worried about tariffs and so forth? So is that a pull forward of demand? So in other words, there might not be quite as much into the future. Sure, but still, with all that evidence in front of us, they still only thought it would be 2, and instead it was 9, Pete.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, you're right. And on the macro side for me, John, I'm going to go right to Bessent and what he's been able to do. Some of the talking that we are hearing has been so much more positive than a lot of the negative things that we also hear so much about. And it seems like, at least now, that, you go to Tuesday, you go to Wednesday, you take a look at what we're doing today on Thursday. We're up about 1% on the Dow right now, up about 2% on the NASDAQ. So far, so good. And I think a lot of that has to do with the positive commentary that we're hearing, John, and the idea that there are countries that are probably willing to start some of the negotiation. We'll see. Obviously, the biggest of the big is going to be China. But there's a lot of positives out there right now, and I think that's what's buoying these markets, along with some great earnings. Not everybody is crushing it, but the majority of what I've been watching, John, on the earnings front has been crushing it, and it's been very, very impressive so far.
Well, let's dive into fantastic futures, Pete. And if you own crude oil in the ground or coming out of the ground, you're not real happy that since April 2nd, when it was $71 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate, it slammed all the way down into the 50s, like 58-ish, Pete. It's back up to about 62. If you ever watch Landman, folks, you know that as Billy Bob Thornton said, or Tommy, as he's known on that show, he says, 60 to 70 is the sweet spot. 90's too high because people start cutting back and going to alternatives. But we're at 62, Pete, and I think that's a good thing for crude oil production and for the consumer.
And maybe another thing that could be a good thing for a lot of folks that are nervous about all this volatility that we've been talking about day after day after day, John. The volatility index has not only gone underneath 30, but now we are in the 27s, and we're at about the lowest levels that we started the month of April off with. So it's interesting to see where we are, how rapidly we've gotten here, but we talk about it all the time. It flies to the upside, it flies to the downside, and here we are once again on a round trip over the last, call it 3.5 weeks or so. Pretty interesting. I think the volatility index today, looking at it, is it at critical levels? I would say 27 is an interesting spot because that has been both the launching pad spot and the pulling spot. So do we actually start to see lower into the low 20s, or do we pop right back up again? And I think that's all going to be something that's going to play out, as we were just talking about. What does the White House, what does President Trump, what does the negotiations look like? That's going to be what really controls what's happening in the volatility right now.
Right. That's your VIX report, folks, for today, the 24th of April. All right. Let's talk, Pete, for a minute about Robert Half.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, this is if you need workers, this is one of the many places you might go. It's a publicly traded company. It's worth a lot of money. Well, earlier today, it was down 15% and falling pretty fast. It has cut those losses pretty substantially. Now, why was it down so hard? Well, they're going to put in cost-cutting measures because business is down. People are not hiring as much right now. And I would bet everybody in this space, it's not like, oh, they left Robert Half and they went over here to this other publicly traded company. No. I think a lot of hiring is on hold. And if that's on hold and you're not even getting temp workers, Robert Half's going to trade down pretty hard. And Pete, that's what they did.
Yeah, and a lot of caution about what the hiring really looks like right now, John. And matter of fact, when you look at the revenue, it missed by about 8% year over year. They missed on the earnings in a big way today. What was expected and what they put up is 53% lower than they expected. So there's a lot of things in this report that didn't sound very great. I will say one thing, however. The stock hit a 52-week low, got all the way down to 40, as you were mentioning, and then it popped off of that, John. Well, maybe that was where the shorts decided to step in. I took a look at the volumes. The volumes were already twice what would be a normal day of trade for the shares. And then next thing you know, the stock's trading closer to $43 after hitting $40 even. So I think there might be something of the squeeze there. I'm sure we've got some guys here at Market Rebellion. Jeff, I think, would be one of those guys that we could talk to a little bit about that, and we'll find out at the end of the day maybe, or tomorrow, whether or not there was a lot of those buyers out there, because there's about a 13% short out there for Robert Half, John. I wouldn't be surprised at all if some of those folks said, you know what, this is a good spot for us to cover. We hit a 52-week low. We're down here at $40. Let's take this son of a gun back, because the high end of this over the last 52 weeks is $78+, John. So sitting there at $40 does seem like a pretty good spot to maybe think about buying it back.
What do you think about IBM, Pete? And the reason I'm bringing this one up is, of course, folks, that they indeed had earnings last night. The earnings were actually pretty damn strong. They reported earnings per share, or EPS, of $1.60. Better than the $1.42 consensus, but that was still down year over year. But it's really all about now, isn't it, more so, Pete, than what they are year over year? In other words, on the shorter term basis, have they turned things around? This is one. Revenue was down 2%. I like it, I must say, Pete, because it's down 7.5% here. I'm looking at my Bollinger Bands and so forth, and it is right down at the low end of those Bollinger Bands, which happen to be around $221. It's 227, but the middle of the range is like 238, Pete. Yeah. So I would look, if we start to get any unusual activity in this one, I would be a buyer of IBM.
I totally agree with you, John. I was taking a look at the exact same thing. I was looking at all these numbers. Yes, they beat on their earnings in a big way. They were down year over year, not by a lot, but they certainly were down year over year. They had a little bit of an issue in certain spots in terms of the revenue itself. Infrastructure revenue was down about 6%. All that being said, the CEO was very, very positive and very strong about one thing, AI. Now, we haven't talked as much about AI because we've had so many different companies that have already given us some of their best thoughts in terms of the earnings. But I think in this particular case, this makes a lot of sense. They're a little bit cautious about it, but the AI demand is still there. It's still going to be there. And that was something that I think really stood out for me to think about. Hey, look, we see unusual options come into this one. I got to look at it really close. I think that's a great opportunity. It's probably a great opportunity to enter into that trade.
Yeah, well, IBM is one of those that frustrates even the biggest of the investors, folks. And I mean Warren Buffett. He has tried to buy this thing a couple times, and most of the time, Pete, he gets burned.
Yeah.
Because he's a believer, and it's American tech company. But boy, it's been dead money for a while. All right, let's dive into another one, Pete, Mobileye. And yes, we had unusual activity in this stock. And take a look at where the unusual activity was, folks. It was when the stock was in the low 13s. It went up into 1440 territory today before pulling back a little. Mobileye is, of course, one of the things that you would certainly use if you were in the, what should I say, Pete, self-driving category. I mean, you know, you've got Waymo with Google. You've got Elon with the Tesla version of FSD, full self-driving. And then you've got these guys, Mobileye, and a number of companies. I think it was about a month ago or so, Pete, we were reporting that Volvo had signed up with them, I think, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. I'll tell you what I'm looking at right now, John, that really, it kind of bothers me that it's down 55% in the last year, the stock. It's just been getting hammered to the downside. Have they done something to actually turn this thing around? Maybe. I mean, this is, you know, autonomous driving is something that everybody seems to want more and more and more. So that technology is there. The revenues did beat by about 8%. So that's a positive for sure. The stock is bouncing off of very close to those 52-week lows, John, down around 10. As you said, the stock trading somewhere closer to 14 right now. I like what they were able to do. They still got to prove that they can make some money out there. They're still losing money. Their earnings, they lost 13 cents. They were expected to lose 27. So that is a good thing, right? But I don't think it's a great thing. So for right now, I like what's happening here. I think if you were in the options, you'd want to make some decisions there. But for the longer term, I still need to see this company make money. They've been around for quite a long time now. They've got to show us that they can figure out how to make money into the future.
Well, then let's take a look at one seeing a pretty significant bounce today, Pete. Texas Instruments up almost $11 or about 7%, getting back into the middle of its range for the short term, you know, those Bollinger Band kind of ranges, Pete. And what did Texas Instruments do, and do they deserve accolades? Well, Q1 results much better than expected for a semiconductor stock. And most of them have been hit pretty hard, including NVIDIA, including Micron and so forth, Intel. But these guys seeing a nice, they were up as much as 8.5%, 9%. They're still holding on to a solid 7%. I'd say this is a damn nice report out of Texas Instruments, Pete.
Yeah, they seem to come through in just about every category, John. You look at the earnings, they crushed it. You look over at the revenue, that was a big number as well, over $4 billion. Optimistic on the guide side as well. Year over year revenue, they're expecting it to be about 11%. So across the board, they are telling us that things are actually going better than probably many of their other competitors that are out there. I like what I see there. The analog side of things is very interesting. The one thing I don't like, I look at their balance sheet a little bit closer today, John, because it's not a name that I follow as closely as all of us do with AMD and NVIDIA and Micron and all these others, Microchip and some of the other names out there. But I didn't really like what I saw, because this is a company that's been around a heck of a long time. They have been one of the best and biggest of all of these different groups that we put together out there in the semiconductor world. But the balance sheet, John, just doesn't do it for me. So I would probably just back off on this one and take a look at some of the other names. But I do like what we did, or what they were able to show us in this last earnings. This is pretty daggone impressive. But is it sustainable? Maybe. And that's something that time will tell, because we've seen stuff like this happen time and time again. But I think Texas Instruments gave us everything we wanted. I just don't like what the balance sheet looks like in terms of, what their cash position is, what their debt position is, all those types of things. It just doesn't add up to me as something that I want to jump into.
Well, how about sports, Pete? Let me take a wild guess. Do my Karnak.
It's pretty tough to figure out what's happening tonight, right?
Something up in Lambeau Field. What would it be? What would it be? The NFL draft.
John, and this does tie into the financials as well as just having fun with sports, but they're expecting about $100 million to come into the city of Green Bay because of what's going on over the next couple of days. It's not just tonight. This goes on for a few days, but this will be a big one. I think people are as excited as they've ever been about this. Anybody who's been in social media, you've been able to see what it looks like and how the setup is for everybody, the media, as well as the players and the fans and everything else. I think it's going to be as it always is, John. They just crush it every single year. They do a great job. That's something the NFL is. Let's be honest. The NFL does everything better than the rest of the major sports, right? I mean, it doesn't matter where you want to go. Do you want to go to the draft? We all know exactly who some of those big players are, some of the very best. Every once in a while, there's a sleeper in there or so, which is always a lot of fun. But they just do a magical job of how they get through it, which is why the ratings are absolutely ridiculous for something that's a draft. It's not a game. It's not the Super Bowl. It's just the draft. But when I look at it, John, I thought it would be kind of fun for a lot of people just to understand that there are some players in here in the top 5 or 6. And I think when you go in the draft, you don't draft people. If you're an NFL GM, you don't draft them for what they are. You draft them for the talent that they've got. So here's who is considered the top 5 or 6 in talent in the draft. Abdul Carter, that outside rusher from Penn State. He's number 1, John. Nobody's even close. He's up there at 1, and then all of a sudden you got to come all the way down to number 2, Travis Hunter, who is kind of like Shohei Ohtani, right? A little bit. I mean, he can do it all. He's not a baseball player. He's not pitching and he's not batting, but this guy can play on both sides of the ball. He's a great receiver, great cornerback, great returner. He's number 2. Ashton Genty, that running back out of Boise State, really, really special. He was up for the Heisman, probably pretty close to being the guy who should have maybe deserved it, as I would say, just because of the numbers he put up. I mean, he was up there with Barry Sanders and some of the greatest running backs ever, some of the numbers that he put up. So he's pretty impressive. There's a linebacker out of Georgia, Walker, who's phenomenal, John. There's a defensive lineman out of Michigan, Graham. You and I probably watch enough football that we know who he is, but most people wouldn't. He's a defensive tackle. How many people know the names of defensive tackles in the league or in college? But I'll tell you what, John, he's a big, strong son of a gun with a good mean side to him as well. And then there's that tight end from Penn State, Tyler Warren. He's pretty special. This guy's a fullback. He's a wide receiver. He's a tight end. He's only 6'6", about 265, John. Runs very, very pretty smooth at about a 4.5 40 type guy. He has everything that you'd ever want. So if you're looking for talent, those are the players that we're going to be seeing. Do you got anybody that you're kind of curious about in the first round, or who might jump in there with the rest of those names?
Well, not as much as you, Pete, but what I do is I went and took a look at how many trades you normally have in the first round. Mm-hmm. And I asked Pete already, folks, and he was damn close to the number. It turns out we're pretty close to 5 or 6 trades in that first round. That'll change a lot, because if indeed we do see 5 trades, there's what, Pete, 31 or 32 picks?
32, yeah.
32 picks. So 5 or 6 changes things by a lot. And thus far, nobody has talked about trades, which means that if we're going to be anywhere near the average, and the highest, by the way, was just a couple years back was 9 trades in the first round. Because if you don't have the player that you want, you might trade down, give somebody else the spot, and see if you can get more picks.
Yeah.
Conversely, if you want to trade up to get the guy that you really want that really fits your system, I think we're going to see probably, I'm going to say, Pete, that we're not going to get to the averages. I think we'll be under that, but I think we'll probably see 3 or 4 trades in the first round tonight. And other than that, Pete, I just wanted to throw out a little bit more of a shout to Mongo McMichael.
Yep.
He passed away yesterday, and great guy. 2-time All-Pro, played in a franchise record 191 consecutive games. Imagine that, folks, 191 consecutive games. And there were some Iron Men that were with the Bears, so that's a very, very impressive number. Second all-time sack getter in Bears history with 92.5 sacks. That's a career and a half. And unfortunately died of ALS. And he had to accept his gold jacket, Pete, from the bed because he couldn't get to Canton. But a great guy. We will miss him.
Yeah, very well missed and very well documented, this whole thing with the terrible disease. ALS is just as bad as it gets, right? And the guy, just a special player, part of some of the greatest defenses ever put on the football field out there under Ditka and all that, and just amazing. So yeah, it's a sad day, but he's probably some relief to some degree with the family and everything else. 67 years old. How about free agency, John? That could change a lot about what you just were talking about in terms of trades. So I'm going to say that we actually might even get a little higher. Maybe we get up towards 5 or 6 trades. Maybe it's 6. And the reason I say that is this. Here's who's still left of the big names, I think, for professional football. Aaron Rodgers, he's still there. 41 years old, hasn't signed with anybody yet. What if he all of a sudden signs with Pittsburgh, and now all of a sudden they all will change who they might be drafting, right? And then it turns into this whole thing where it churns up the entire draft because of that. Another one, Keenan Allen, wide receiver, 32 years old. He's a good one. Von Miller, who you and I know modestly, pretty interesting. 36 years old, though. He's starting to show some of that age as well, John. So I think I'm a little bit concerned from that perspective. Deontay Johnson, another wide receiver. Amari Cooper, another wide receiver. Those could change. If they get signed today, that could change who people are going to be drafting, right? And the one thing that stands out for me, John, and I keep saying it and I'll keep saying it, wide receivers are a dime a dozen, as proven by these guys who are big name receivers. They've been around for a while and they want to get into the free agency spot and they haven't signed yet. Why is that? I think it's because there's so damn many wide receivers already out there. So if you're in this draft and you're looking to trade, don't trade up for wide receivers. You're trading up to get somebody else. Maybe it's a great running back, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, edge rusher, quarterback, whatever it is. But I think that will produce even more trades if we see any of these guys go, especially somebody like Aaron Rodgers, because that could really change a lot about quarterbacks and who somebody might draft. Because if Aaron Rodgers comes back again for this year, he might even be there for 2 years. Who knows? And then you could wait till next year to make your draft pick in terms of a quarterback. So it could be really, really interesting. And I think those are the players that could influence what you were talking about, which is how many trades we could get in the first round this year.
Well, Pete, when we do hear about trades, Pittsburgh has been pretty vocal about willingness to trade down if their defensive picks are not available. Now, I think all of us kind of know Pittsburgh as a defensive-minded team. They've had great receivers like John Stallworth and Lynn Swann and things, but that's decades ago, folks. They are a defensive-minded team. A.J. Watt's, J.J. Watt's brother, A.J. is one of the best there is in pass rushing and so forth right now, and run stopping. But they are a blue collar team. They want the big stud defenders. And if they're not available, they will trade down, Pete. So that's one of the teams. And for what you said too, Pete, depending where quarterbacks go, Aaron could either decide he's retiring or finally pull the ripcord and parachute into Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But so far he has not.
Right.
And I'm sure that's frustrating for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. And I'll tell you what, Lambeau Field, I mean, it's going to be electric tonight. That's for sure.
Well, folks, make sure you check out the marketrebellion.com webinar tonight. That webinar comes your way at 4 p.m. Eastern time. It is free. So you can attend just by registering. You just have to go to marketrebellion.com. You put in the /register. So marketrebellion.com/register. And you could join us if 4 o'clock's too easy or too tough, whatever, you've got too many things going on. We will send you a copy of it as long as you're registered. Nice. So check it out, marketrebellion.com/register. And Pete and I will be back Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern time.